Hey guys, this is Mike and Colin over there. Say hi, Colin.
Evening.
From the ARG Pro Force of Will team, coming at you with currently two dudes in the chat room. Hopefully, eventually, some other dudes start joining into the chat room. But if not, you just got our beautiful faces here, and nobody else because they were all being a bunch of nerds.
Yeah. Well, probably not. Probably we're the ones being nerds right now, but yeah.
That's our secret. So we're coming at you guys today. I know it's been a while since we've done one of these discussion videos. There's been a lot going on recently. The holidays, obviously. The online GP was a big deal, and that shit was fun. But uh, definitely a really good time over there. And we're coming at you with kind of a midway through New Valhalla set one, kind of a metagame report, what we've been experiencing. We're also going to go over a little bit of what we hope to see coming up in New Valhalla 2. Hopefully what I want to see, obviously. And then if we have time, we'll go in a little bit more detail on the upcoming ARG tournament in Orlando, which I'll be at. So I'll see you guys there if you happen to be there. So without further ado, Colin, how have you been recently with the game? What have you been up to, aside from making pandas?
Oh, aside from that, it hasn't been too much. It's been like you said, the holidays and stuff was happening, and so I haven't had a chance to look at it too hard. Outside of sort of some of the random decks, like I played against the little tiny ARG we went to and stuff like that, which was pretty fun. Like got to see a more modern Keurig, which I haven't seen, which I thought was pretty cool. And I haven't been able to see too much of Time Spain Witch, but she hasn't really, changed a whole lot over time. Really,
Which will be as which will be.
Yeah, and I've already played against that, and I know how that goes. So and I haven't had a chance to experience too much. Chumimi is really the only deck that's sort of eluded me too much. Been played against IU and all that. So far I've been liking the format. Like I said, I haven't played against too much against Time Spain Witch, so that seems to be the big one. But outside of that, no deck feels like it's too crazy right now. It feels like a pretty open road. The only thing that might be looming over that is Time Spinning Wedge, but we'll kind of see how that works out in Orlando, if that holds true or if that's just the feeling I have or other people have until that's really put to the test.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a very good statement to say, the fact that it's an open format, but which is just kind of like a boogeyman right now. I think the big phrase that people throw around, especially that I've been throwing around, is that which is probably the most polarizing deck out of any other matchup you'll see. Like, you need to have, like, most of the time, you need to have green in order to beat her. Otherwise, you have to really, really high roll that matchup. And if you happen to just low roll one time, you get locked out of the game, which is obviously obnoxious. But it's a deck that isn't like, it's not like a kill you on turn 2 deck or anything like that. It's just like, there's an unfun mechanic in the deck, and it's just happens early.
And it's funny because and especially like you could skirt, like you say, skirt by, especially blue. You could probably get away with if you run the deck in a certain way, but it's interesting because you say you have to run green against it, which you do for the obvious reason of Lorite is the main one, and Lorite I don't like as a card, but it's needed for Time Spinning Witch. However, technically, you wouldn't have to run green against Time Spinning Witch if Lorite was stronger, if you think about it. Because if Lorite was even stronger, but more centralized to counter Time Spinning Witch specifically, and not just counter every single card that you could possibly think of in the format, it would make it so even though not everyone runs green, you might not run Time Spinning Witch, because if you go against a green matchup, you're going to instant lose. That's not the case right now. If you go against a green matchup, Time Spinning Witch still has a chance, which shouldn't be the case for something that cancels out its main objective. And so I feel like the thing that we need really just to balance out the format is a card that's stronger than Lorite. It could be in green, it could be in another color, but doesn't work universally. It could work against other stuff, but it's mainly geared against Time Spinning Witch. Like, say something that's a 1-drop that cancels target God's Art, your opponent you can't use that God's Art again. So even flipping Time Spinning Witch, they can't recover that God's Art at that point in time, and it's a 1-drop. That might not be as strong as I'm thinking in my head, but you can sort of get the idea I'm thinking of, which it's just one of those funny things where, like, yeah, you need to run green against Time Spinning Witch, but if green was stronger against Time Spinning Witch, then technically you wouldn't have to run green against Time Spinning Witch because Time Spinning Witch would choke itself out.
Yeah. If we have time later, I do want to go over Joey from Deepwood and I have actually been discussing exactly this, where it's like, we need a card that isn't Lorite in the game, and has, if we want to keep Distortion of Time in the game, obviously. And we came up with 2 cards that I think were kind of problem solvers. We'll go over that in our hopes and dreams for the new Valhalla set, set 2, because we also kept them somewhat flavorful to the mechanics of the game. So that's definitely something that can be done. The big thing about Witch is that people keep talking about things that aren't Lorite that are counters, even though Lorite's, be all end all. People keep talking. Every time somebody brings up Evil Elemental Uprising as counter to the Distortion of Time, I have to school them immediately. Because my opponents, I played Time Spinning Witch at the ARG over in New York. Almost every single one of my guild opponents put Evil Elemental Uprising in their sideboard and sided it in against me. And at the end of the game, they would just drop their hand and 2 Evil Elemental Uprisings would be in there. And they'd be like, why didn't I get a chance to use those? It's because if you happen to have the Distortion of Time, available to you immediately, and then in the same turn you can activate its God's Art, there's no time in between the activating, going to grave, and removing for activating, where your opponent has a chance to respond with the Uprising. So it's just like, there's a good Witch player will give you no time to play Uprising at all.
Yeah, and you can scout out it because almost no one's going to main deck Evil Elemental Uprising. So going into game 2, of course there might be some exceptions, but for the most part, you're just going to assume they side deck that in if you're playing. If you're good at playing,
people who want to put in their guild deck, yeah.
Yeah, well, like I sided it out for my Panda deck on the off chance that I went against that, or what was the other? Or going against a guild deck. Not that it would help too much against guild, but it would at least buy me time for certain things that I want to do. And unfortunately, I never played against Time Spinning Witch, but it's something that's, it's just instinctive at this point because you're trying everything you can. It's the biggest deck, so you're just going to throw everything you can in there. But if Time Spinning Witch player plays good, they not only are avoiding that, but now they've created dead cards in your deck in your hand. So they're now, by you siding into that card, they have a double advantage, bigger than they had in game 1.
Incremental advantage building on, which is the big thing about Witch. Witch is all about just small incremental things beyond the Distortion of Time, the Angel Statue, Idol of Magic, getting a Dinosaur Surfacing out early just thins the deck. Everything your deck says, thin your deck by 1, and play out a big threat and slightly increase your board advantage or even your ramp potential, which is fantastic. And the deck does exactly what you need it to do, which is why a lot of players, I think, are starting to flock to it. It's a polarizing deck, but it's also one of the most potent proactive decks we've seen. Because a lot of decks like, say, Gil, even like Jimmy sometimes even Broomhild, we see them having to take very passive turns, which barely has any passive turns, which are really important.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things where if you look at the deck and how it works, for the most part, it's not. I personally really like Time Spinning Witch deck and how it works. I love this sort of janky type of. I mean, it's not janky anymore. It's mainstream, so I guess I don't like it. But it wins. Obviously, it puts a big body in the field and stuff like that. But it wins almost like in a secondary way. The Mosasaurus is just how it chunks down your life points, but it's not the reason it wins. So I always like that about the deck. And if you look at the deck, it's not necessarily overpowered in its own right. The thing that even Distortion of Time isn't necessarily overpowered in its own right. The only thing that I think like pushes it over just a tad is probably just Time Spinning Witch passively producing the Time Wheel. I think that's the only thing that's really pushing the deck to that edge, because that's a bigger advantage than I think a lot of people realize, especially when it was spoiled. No one even gave the deck a second thought, but that producing will.
a big thing is that I'm actually under the frame of mind that even without the distortion of time in the game, which would still be like a tier 1.5 deck. Like, the mana production, especially with the statues, just phenomenal. Like, overbearingly powerful.
And like you would pay 2 will to grab a stone off the top of your deck and put it into your field rested or whatever the card might be for 2 will. Her for 2 will, you get the statue, which now you can funnel her will and produce, which it works in essence like the other one did, where it ramped you 1 extra will, except this one ramps you a Ruler's Memoria essentially. So
and for the remainder of the game, it's technically ramped there as well.
No one's running Edition Destruction, especially with Scheherazade gone. That passive Edition Destruction that she had is gone, so it's very easy just to stick that statue out into the field and not have to worry about it ever again.
And then of course, one of the big things that I realized, I was actually talking to Ryan about the deck, because he obviously got first place in GP Minnesota, the 10K, and he explained to me that turn 1 Idol of Magic actually curves perfectly into turn 2 just beyond the threshold of time, and is basically the 2-card opener that helps you just chunk out every single Gil matchup that you ever see. Like, it was insane to think about that.
That's true, yeah.
It's absolutely wild.
Because unless you're going against, say, an extremely aggressive red deck, those first couple turns, especially as Witch, you can take some stuff to the face. You don't have to worry about them ramping up their field, because especially with that will advantage, you just ramp into you make them not recover, and then when you have the Mosasaurus out, they never put anything on the field in those first 2 turns that can deal with the Mosasaurus.
Absolutely not.
And then from that point on, there's just...
And if they do, you just spin it back into the deck with the Dragon Lord's Breath, because that card's insane.
Yeah, so...
Like, absolutely insane. I don't know who on the design team thought that was good to add into the Witch package. Let's give the Witch the best mid-range deck that can shut down other mid-range deck, the best anti-aggro tool in the game that also draws them a card, because everything in Witch has to draw a card, including the God's Art that shuts them down, but you draw a card first. And, like...
Which I'm fine with draw cards being in blue, but yeah, it's it's like the path we part for a little while. Having a balance inside of red aggro decks for 1-cost Quickcast is crazy, and so having
absolutely nuts.
But it
doesn't see play because it's not in TSW.
It's one of those things like for example with my Panda deck. So my Panda deck, the whole thing revolves around me judgmenting and swinging in. So basically, all I have to do with the deck is survive until turn 3 or 4, and if I can get to turn 3 or 4 without dying, then the odds of me winning the game is probably 80 to 90% or something like that. So Time Span Witch works the same way, where if you can get to turn 3, I think it's turn 3, yeah, especially with the combo you mentioned, then you're not dead, or you still have more than 1,000 or 1,500 life or something like that, then the odds of you winning a game with the Witch is probably like 90 to 95%. If you can survive those first couple turns while doing stuff, I'm not talking about being stagnant those first 2, you're doing stuff, but then you've won the game type of thing. So it's...
You win the game, you win the game.
Yeah, unless you have a super aggressive deck, or, in my opinion, a super, super passive deck, there's really not much in between there that you can do with.
Sorry for my knuckles cracking, that was loud. But another big thing is that while playing the Witch deck, I also realized that some of the glue for the deck is in Lorite's 7 Disciples. Because that card, on top of the fact that you have a bunch of stuff that is meant to cancel the only thing that cancels the Witch. So, like, the deck plays like 4 Lorite, 2 Fairy Spell. Like, he was maining Keys' calls because he's like, yeah, they're basically just Fairy Spells that draw cards. I'm like, that logic is super sound in this deck, because the only thing that stops it is Lorite, and that's about 8 cards in the deck that just say fuck Lorite.
And Keys' Call is a little bit safer because if like you said, especially if you're doing that early game God's Art with the draw card, and there's a chance that maybe you didn't get it as early as you want. You're 1 turn, not necessarily 1 turn, but a little bit later, just a tad bit later than you want to be. So your opponent has will to Lorite. All you need is the 1 will to Keys' Call, and with keys call being blue, you're far more likely to be drawn into a blue than a green for your time-spanning witch deck. So it's just more beneficial, and then you get to draw a card. So you're better. Anything you can do to fix your hand perfectly, which you only really need a couple cards to fire off. So it's pretty much all, with all the draw power, like you're saying, you're almost guaranteed to get what you want as long as you do a good mulligan at the beginning of the game.
Exactly. It's like literally the deck's only crux is relying on time stones to get a second God's Art off. Basically, your stone base says you need to get a little lucky to win more. And I'm like, okay. I guess that's the case then. Which is fine, obviously, because I think Witch being limited by stones is a similar thing to what we saw with Fox. But Fox really needed to just get the engine going, Witch needs it to stay in the game, which is a good thing to have, you know, kind of juxtaposing. And then you just rely on, like, Speaking Stone, a couple other water stones. Deck's just construction is really, really solid. I think, like, when I was testing it, I was trying a bunch of really odd things. Like, I tried Pygmy Hippo with Jormungandr in the first build, and I'm like, Pygmy Hippo just does not do enough. This feels bad. And then after enough playtesting and, like, trying to figure out ratios, I ended up, like, 3 cards off of Ryan's build, and I'm like, this is just so tight. It's too tight. It's so good.
Go on.
Like, it's an ode to the fact that he and I just always build like similar decks. Like even back when I was first learning the game, when he was first learning the game, both of us just like brought Necrolands to a local tournament. It's just like we always happen to find like really similar things, and I think that's bodes well for how mid-range players tend to flock to this deck. I think it's just too good for that.
So outside of Time-Spanning Witch, do you think anything else is a high tier, or is it or in the same tier as Time-Spanning Witch, or is everything after that a tier below Time-Spanning Witch?
Shamimi and Hanzo, I think, are in the same tier as Time-Spanning Witch.
Okay.
I think the tiers go right now, Witch, Shamimi, and Hanzo. Then I think Gil is 1.5-ish. Like, he's definitely not bad by any means, but he's definitely, like, a little bit subpar right now, just the way that he's playing, because Gil needs a weight. Like, the big thing about green decks that win against Witch is that they're decks that play Lorite, that just have good mid-game, and also have a way to close out against Witch. And unfortunately, if you're playing Gil, who really doesn't close out the game until he flips, and normally you need a lot of that mana to stop yourself from getting locked out, you're not going to be doing very well in that situation, which is why I think people need to focus a little bit more on what I believe is like a mid-range Gil package. I've been testing a little bit, well, I've been crafting a little bit with it. I haven't done any testing yet, but I think that could be the answer. And I won't know until I test it out, and most of the public won't know until I bring it to Orlando if it's good or not. Because if it's not better than Witch, I'm bringing Witch. That's pretty much the be-all, end-all in that situation. Although Chimimi's actually a pretty good choice too. Also, I like Hanzo. And then past that, everything else is like Kyric's tier 2 now, Brunhild's tier 2, Lucifer's tier 2. What other cards matter? Panda's off the radar. Sorry, Colin.
Shh. He'll be fine later.
Listen, try to keep your secret metatech secret, okay? Something I wanted to actually test with is Imul, because if anybody has seen the memes on Witch posting, I was quoted as saying, Witch say no untap, Imul say untap, Imul good. I want to try something with that. I've been experimenting with Adam Sakehart, the 3-drop 0/10.
Oh, yeah.
Because once Witch is locking you down, you need a way to stop their plays, but also a way to do it that doesn't involve tapping or attacking. And Adam Sakehart does exactly that.
That's true, yeah.
He's also 3-drop that can get off of Imul. Bam. Easy game, easy life.
I'm trying to think of what else Imul works off of.
Well, she gets Mephistopheles off the top of the deck, which says Mosasaurus doesn't trigger, and Lorites die.
That's true. Mepho's great.
Yeah, Meph's cool, and then just the passive life gain off of Imul's always really good. You get cheap stuff like Flourishing Hope.
Oh, I love Flourishing Hope's one of my favorite cards.
I love that card so much. I wish it was better.
I mean, technically, you could side into to help with things like IU and maybe some other stuff you can side into Grim.
I think IU's also like tier 1.5, maybe tier 2 right now. Just like IU's worst matchup is Witch, which is, you know, pretty good deck.
Yeah,
I think the consensus is that if you don't open Possession Stone, your chances of beating the Time Spinning Witch are like 15%. It's something stupid. It's like there's almost no way to beat Witch if you don't open with the proper stone.
Well, and not even that, just opening with the proper hand, because in an IU deck, the odds of you pulling the cards you need is infinitely smaller. Even with a hard mulligan, if you mulligan all 5 cards, it's still like crazy small to pull into something as simple as like a Lorite to help counter Time Spinning Witch. The odds of you pulling that is, I don't know, whatever math that equals out to. Versus if you could have 4 Lorites in there, plus so you'll run 1 Lorite, you'll run 1 Keys' Call, 1 of whatever else you need. But you have that, and then, like I said, compounded with the odds of you pulling a stone, where even if you pulled a stone that plays a certain color that you need, it only is playing just that 1 or maybe 2 colors that you possibly need, and not all of them are going to be counters to whatever Time Spinning Witch does. So it's...
Yeah, I think IU's hand literally has to be at least like 2 souls, and then you have to be able to hit the Resuscitating Will, and you have to have Energize and go on and Judgment like on turn 2. Like that's the only way you can win, and you also have to hit the Possession Stone to make sure you get the Speaking Stone, or hit like a Light Stone so you can get the Resuscitating Will and actually do the combo. So much has to go right. It's like ridiculous. And forget it if you're going first. Like going first against Witch, you're basically sealing your fate.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to really play it is just hope you have a good hand and pull the right stones. But if you do, you can just, what you do is you just don't tap down anything. Wait to do a Judgment with 2 stone, and never have more than 2 stones when you Judgment. That way, even if they Mosasaurus you, they have to Mosasaurus one of their stones as well, and you can kind of play off of that by Judgmenting early and doing stuff with her, but you still gotta, because Mosasaurus, I mean, you don't have to worry about it too much if you have enough to swing in with flying, but there's ways around it, but the biggest thing is you just got to pull into the right stones, and that's the biggest problem it's running into. Yeah,
exactly, which obviously makes sense.
Yeah,
and let me tell you, the amount of times I hit my own stones with Mosasaurus just to make sure my opponent was locked out of the game, it doesn't feel as bad when you're at like 5 stones.
I mean, at least it's not too bad for IU being infinite locked out, because she can discard for free and God's Art for free and stuff. So she's at least, as long as you can guarantee the damage, you're at least getting stuff done. The problem is if you swing in before... Yeah, because if you swing in and then they God's Art, then you're kind of screwed there as well. So it's just a tricky thing. Like I said, probably best just to have Energize, but not use the Energize to Judgment. I would keep that Energize for... oh
no, I would immediately Judgment. Especially if I hit Possession Stone on 1, I'm Judgmenting on 2. That's like guaranteed.
Maybe. And because... Well, I mean, yeah, because you went out a little bit with Mosasaurus, because now they're resting 2 of their stones instead of 1 to keep you locked out of that 1 stone.
No, I'm not even thinking about Mosasaurus. I'm thinking about the fact that Distortion of Time comes literally the next turn.
Yeah, but if they don't have anything to target with Distortion of Time, they're not going to play it. My point was you're never tapping a stone down. You're only calling stones. So the Distortion of Time, the only thing they're doing is stopping you from calling a stone for a turn if they Distortion of Time early. So my whole strategy for Time Spinning Witch, and this is something I did at the GP when Time Spinning Witch was popping up. Or did I do? No, I didn't play against Time Spinning. I played against another deck, but the idea was still the same because it played very similarly as far as how to counter it, which is you just got to play super passively, in the sense that you don't want to tap down your stones too much. You can tap down 1, maybe 2 if you really are confident, but the idea is you keep calling stones, you cycle through your hand, and keep drawing cards until you feel confident that when you tap those stones down, if those stones never recover for the next 4 turns, whatever you just called onto the field or what you're doing, you're confident that that'll carry you through to at least when you can untap, or to carry you through to win the game. And so the idea is you want to play super passively, only tapping down to do 1 or 2 will to cancel, or maybe put down a body on the field to help protect you in case something's swinging into you, like if Time Spin, which is doing an early game, like notices what you're doing, so they throw down like a Lorite and Lorite 7 Disciples or something like that. Depending on
what mid-range witch, it's scary.
Yeah, well, if they start posing that sort of threat, then you got to sort of adjust accordingly. But most people that are going to do Time Span Witch, they're going to go look at the main deck list for it, and which is going to be your run-of-the-mill, lock them down, Mosasaurus, win. And against those decks, you can win by being super aggressive or super passive, and you can't be iffy about either one. You got to go all in and not hesitate to be super aggressive or super passive. Because if you're like, oh, I'm being super passive, I kind of want to play this, and you tap down 2 stones and play that, and now you lose because you didn't go all in. And same with super aggro, you're afraid of them knocking down all of your stones. So you keep some open, and you don't play down that resonator that could swing in for more damage or block some more stuff. And then next turn you're going to pay the price for that and stuff like that. So I think you have to lean heavily into whatever your deck is doing, and you can't be wishy-washy about it.
Yep, exactly.
So you had wanted to talk about NV2.
Oh yeah,
Electric Boogaloo.
New Valhalla 2, fixing the game one step at a time. So, obviously, some predictions out of the way. We already know that we're going to kind of get similar functions to what we've seen in the past. Machines are definitely going to get more +1/+1 counter support, which might push them up a little bit. Might even force some witch decks to become like Machine Witch, which sounds horrifying. But since they don't have maintenance, definitely a little bit rough. Trying to think of what else. I hope red gets better runes and just general support, because I think that red was probably the most shafted color out of this recent set. Just because every card in their arsenal says play aggressive, and then they have 2 mid-range control rulers. So, not sure what we get to do with that, but we can do stuff with it. And by stuff, I mean give them better mid-range and control support, and make sure they don't add a witch. But that's gonna be in my actually, since we're talking about New Valhalla predictions, I could talk about the 2 cards that Joey and I designed that could be replacements for Lord if they so choose to keep distortion in the game. And when I say so choose to keep distortion in the game, I think distortion and Lorite are at the height of everyone's ban list wish list. And I don't exactly think that they're going to get banned, but I think that if the set continues to come out and there's still no better answer to distortion and Lorite is still oppressive to any deck that is trying to play fun, who knows?
Yeah, I think well, because you can't axe Lorite and keep distortion. Exactly. That you just physically can't do that. So if you axe Lorite, you're also axing distortion. You could conceivably axe distortion and keep Lorite. I don't know if that's really healthy for the game, for the meta, or for like competitive side of it. And I think that it might start pigeonholing back into green decks because of how strong Lorite is. But I could see them doing that just because they don't want to ban 2 cards at once. But
they've done in the past.
Yeah, they could. I mean, they could also do the route I said where they ban Lorite because they've introduced a new answer, more balanced answer. Yep. In the next set as well.
The name of this note that I've made for this exact reason, this won't show up on here probably.
There it
is. It just says fuck Lorite. So, so this is the list that we made for that. So it's 2 cards, 1 in blue, 1 in red. We tried to remain flavorful to the set. The first one is the Witch's Stunning Brew. It's a chant, obviously. a blue chant that costs 1 water will and 1 void will. It has Quickcast and Remnant, and its ability is simply to cancel target activate ability.
Okay.
So I think because we wanted to make a card that was similar to Glimpse of Kaguya. Remember that card from back in the day?
I like that card, yeah.
Yeah, that card was cool. I really like that card too.
And to be clear, it's cancel target non-will activate ability.
Excuse me. Any activate ability is a non-will activate ability in the sense of canceling, because you cannot cancel will-based activate abilities. But
technically, but they had that old fiasco with that edition where they had to
clarify. Well, yeah. Well, Barrier of Shadows just said they couldn't be activated. Same with like Tsukiyomi no.
Oh yeah, I guess it was couldn't be activated. Yeah.
No worries. The terminology is weird, but they made sure to look at it properly. So originally, I was thinking of having it as just 1 water cost, and having it cancel an activate ability, and then awakening for void and blue to let you draw a card. So it's not strictly better than Glimpse of Kaguya, but it was, in line with Loki support because of awakening. But then I remembered that I don't have to stick to that. So it just has Remnant instead, which I think is also fine because it also just kind of fits the blue theme that we've had since Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic, since Confinement, which has started to see a little bit of play. So I think that's very much in line. I think we could see a card with that similar design. A card that I think probably won't be printed because the wording was impossible to make clear and not weird. This was the Fire edition we created, Sealed Chamber of the Ascendants. It's an edition, 5 red, costs fire and 1 void. When it enters, you draw a card, so it's basically got the Wind Secluded Refuge clause on it, which I think makes every 2-cost edition playable. And the text is simply, cards in either player's graveyard cannot leave the graveyard.
Okay. That sounds like a crazy hard counter for Gil too. Like,
yep.
Gil's dead if that is on the field.
Also counters being healed for the revival mechanics.
That's true.
Counters Lich to an extent because he's got some reanimator stuff, but not a lot of really good ones. But again, it's pigeonholed to fire, which is currently not that strong of a color, which I think would give him a little bit of push. It's also flavorful with the archetype because we just had Burial Rites revealed. Well, not revealed. We have Burial Rites. It's just a bad card right now because Uprising exists, and Uprising isn't good. So a bad Uprising will not be good, despite it being in red. So I figure a card that's more of like hard counter, just like you play it, you shut off one aspect of your opponent's game plan, but they're not limited by what's in their hand. So they can still play it. It doesn't affect the board state, doesn't affect their hand state. Literally only affects them setting up their grave and working with it. A lot of people still play Edition Hate in the form of Destruction of the Portal. I've started playing Saturnius in a bunch of my blue decks. I'd actually practice with it at States in New York because it just puts an addition to the bottom of your opponent's deck. But because of that, the draw mechanic on Sealed Chamber of the Ascendants would be like the reason to play it, even if Edition Hate is still strong.
Yeah. Well,
it's basically just 1-for-1's the edition.
Well, and like you said, the draw card makes the value worth it. So if you pay 2 and you draw a card, and then they pay, say, 1 to destroy the edition, then you basically, in the scheme of things, you paid 1 will to draw a card, which is still not putting you at a disadvantage because, that's not too bad. And you
exactly.
And depending on what you have to play, that could even be more optimal because if you didn't have too much else to play, or if that was your game plan while you did other stuff, then your opponent taking time to spend will to try and destroy that works in your favor even more than if you had been able to keep that 2 will and nothing happened type of thing. So
and the coolest part is that if they Destruction of the Portal something else, and you play this in after they've already played the Destruction of the Portal, they can't use that same Destruction of the Portal on the Sealed Chamber because it can't move from the game. With Remnant, bam.
There we go.
Easy power plays.
Yeah, no, I think something like that would be kind of cool because I like it because I like cards that sort of put things into sections. So like, hey, this section of the game is going to happen this way, and so you don't have to worry about anything else. So in that sense, it's like, here's the graveyard. The graveyard is the graveyard. You don't have to worry about anything with the graveyard because the graveyard is the graveyard. And I like that type of stuff. If something's like the card, now I'm blanking on the name, but your opponent can't draw more than, you know, 1 card per turn or something, whatever that was called.
The King's Blade.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, your deck is you draw your card for your turn, and that's it. No more draws and stuff. So it's I like that type of stuff.
A lot of the reason I like that is that I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh,
Mm.
and I liked certain floodgates that weren't just like immediately win the game floodgates.
So like 2.
Stuff like Vanity's Emptiness was stupid, but stuff like Thunder King Ryo, or the exact inspiration I had for Sealed Chamber was Necro Valley from Yu-Gi-Oh, where it literally just said your opponent cannot interact with cards in their graveyard. It's just kind of like an off-limits type thing, which I think is a good design philosophy, especially if your metagame is tailored to graveyard-based effects. Like, there should be some counterplay, and I think that kind of counterplay is important.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've ever really seen much of that in Force of Will, even though stuff like Remnant's been around for a lot of the game, and graveyard effects in general have been around. So that is interesting. Now that you mentioned it, that I can't think of anything that's really interacted with what you can do with your graveyard specifically, outside of just trying to be like, you don't have a graveyard now.
Exactly. Because one of the cards I immediately think of with regard to that is the Floating Isle, which I think is one of the coolest design cards I've ever seen. Not just because it's the only Quickcast edition, that's always sick. But the fact that the card literally just says, you... God. I'm so sorry. The card literally says players cannot play more than 1 card per turn. It's a mutual effect, which is the same as this card. Both players don't have access to it. It's an effect that doesn't immediately force the game state to change much, unless your opponent was trying to go wide. If they were trying to go wide, this is basically just like, oh, hold on there, buddy. And this is kind of the same idea I had for the Sealed Chamber, because I think a card like that, hopefully it's something like that gets printed in New Valhalla too, because if not, we're going to be struggling with Witch still. So that's definitely a major hope that I have, along with maybe just like a blue cancel for activate abilities. I think that's fine. And then we've already had 1 card revealed, which I don't know if you want to put it on the screen. If not, I can bring it up.
We'll see. We'll see.
It was the rune that says destroy target magic stone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which was like just revealed for that. I don't know if that'll see any play, because I'm pretty sure it was like Darkness 2.
Yeah, it was a really high cost. Where I think I was talking to Oscar, and I think I had figured out a way to get it out decently early, but it's still for what you're getting out of it, and it's a rune, so it's a one-off and stuff like that. It's probably not going to see too much play. It's been a while since I've looked at it, though, to be fair. So because there is Destroy, and there's one other effect it got.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what else it did. This is spoiled a while back. I'm excited for Flora season, by the way.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell by me designing cards.
Especially now that I actually know what's going on with Rune Cards and how they work, which I still think they should have told us before spoiler season started last time. But now that we know what to look for, what to get excited for. Like before, we didn't know whether to be excited about a card or just ignore it, or be really mad at a card, or think it's just okay and stuff like that. So now we have a pretty good idea.
Here's the Fallen problem.
I still think that's a bit of a problem, but it's fine now. I think anything 0 cost, regardless of how strong it is a problem. But that's just me.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so I brought up the card. Again, hopefully we just find somewhere to place it. Maybe you can just put it on my face. So it's Ruined Earth, Darkness 3. It's a chant rune with Divinity 2. We play 1 less to play it from a rune area, which is
okay, so
pretty
that's
solid.
the 4, yeah.
But you can also play 3 in the main deck. So if you want to play Stone Destruction deck in black that starts playing on turn 5, you can.
They can all be canceled by Hanzo, though, for free.
Oh, perfect. I love it. And then the ability is destroy target magic stone, and then resonates your opponent controls gain -4/-4 until end of turn. So
right,
for the cost, it's 2 very small effects technically, but bundled together, they're not bad per se.
It's a good, especially now I'm remembering where technically with that effect, it actually is pretty decent if you can get it off early enough. For example, for that cost, you could throw it in. I'm trying to think of a good deck. Like say, I mean, let's just to slot it into something. We'll say Time Spinning Witch, because Time Spinning Witch can technically ramp into will pretty quickly. So you get the statue, so that's 1, 2, 3. You're at 4 will turn 2-ish. Well, if you have Energized, then technically, so we'll say turn 3. Turn 3, you could probably throw that out there. So turn 3, you've already locked them out, probably. Maybe you got a Mosasaurus out. Let's say it's the best game you've ever had. So probably didn't get the Mosasaurus out, but still, you locked them out, come into your turn. You throw that down, you get rid of one of those stones that are locked out, or maybe they have one that they didn't tap or something like that. You just panicked and did it. You destroy the one untapped stone, and you're -4 in their field because they tap stones down at some point. So they probably put something on their field. But those things they put on the field, there's a decent chance that they would die to a 400 attack or 400 damage, which or a stat change or something like that. So, and you could probably combo this with maybe one other card technically, just to guarantee kills against certain cards. But being able to beat Time Spinning Witch.
Is that card Sandstorm? Because I'm pretty sure that card's Sandstorm.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
It's exactly Sandstorm.
So you combo that with Sandstorm, perhaps, but. Being able to destroy a stone, clear their field, essentially reset them. Yeah, you're basically tapped out, but now you're a stone ahead at minimum, and probably more, assuming you're running a ramp into that deck. And they've essentially wasted the first couple turns because now their field is empty. And depending on the stone you killed, you could also have, in this monocolor format without dual color stones, you could have potentially ruined them pretty hard. Maybe they're having a bad game and they pulled black, and they run 3 black stones, and the rest are blue. So they run a blue deck with some black in it. So they drew black, blue. You destroy the blue stone, they draw into black. You're pretty much guaranteed to win at that point. So it's I could see it being used in some way.
All right. I'm going to offer you a rebuttal and say I'm going to give about 5 reasons why this card will see 0 play until...
I wonder what those 5 reasons are.
Which? Reason 1, which. So, A, this card doesn't hurt Witch because it does what Witch does, but worse. Like in all aspects of the game. Also, 4 mana... You're never going to tap yourself down for mana because then the Witch just wins the game, which is fine. And then Witch will never play it because Source of Time and Moza do its job infinitely better. So that's reason 1.
Well, there's nothing. If you go against a Time Spinning Witch, there's nothing that it's hitting on the field. So you're just doing it for the. You're paying 4 to 5 will to kill 1 stone.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right, reason 2. Before I start coughing again. Hanzo Master Rune exists. Alright, next.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Reason 3. Gil has Vanish. And Gil also ramps stones way faster. So, and also doesn't have anything that the -4/-4 hits, aside from the Leaf Paladin if you follow it up with a Sandstorm, I don't know, whatever. Number 4. Darkness decks have been traditionally pretty bad this format just because discard is not very good unless you're playing the Time Spinning Witch Mirror. And if the decks that would play this card are not doing well, this card will not do well unless for some reason I'm missing some kind of massive synergy that I can get off this, but I don't think I am because the card seems not so good. So those are my reasons for now. You can slander me in the comments later on Facebook and YouTube. please do. I love being told that I'm wrong and then disproving that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll depend on what cards are other cards are released in New Valhalla, and stuff like we were talking about. If they ban certain cards or create certain counters that change the format and what decks are the top decks, that'll also affect it. Like and depending on also what other cards they could create a Blackstone that produces 2 will if you play a rune card with it, and so you play that. And so if you have 2 of those on your field, turn 1 and turn 2, and you have that in your rune deck, then suddenly that's a really good card to have and stuff like that. So there's little like all it takes is 1 card to put over the edge. But yeah, I agree. As of right now, especially with Time Spinning Witch as the main deck, is
well, number 5 why it's bad.
Okay.
Speaking of Stone's Barrier, bam. Okay, cool. Continue.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. They. I don't know why they had such a hard-on for Scheherazade. God, so weird.
Joey and I thought that the people who created the dolls, the people who created the stone, the people who created Scheherazade's front and backsides were all locked in separate rooms for like a week with only like a basic concept of the card. And this is what Legend does, this is what Grimoire does. Any questions? And they're like, let me design the hell out of this. Let's go.
And each room separately was told, don't worry, everyone else is making really weak, shitty versions of whatever they're working on. So make that as strong as you need to help balance it out. And so all of them made it as strong as they could think of.
I don't want to say that it's a really solid concept that probably existed, but that probably happened.
I had to with, and a lot of other probably stuff happened at gunpoint to make sure not be banned for as long as she was. Like, what? Hold on, I just want to. I'm curious if she'll destroy the game as fast as Reflector Refrain. I have a bet going. It's important we don't ban her yet. Had to have been something like that.
They had like a football like a Super Bowl score sheet that predicts the date that she breaks the game, and they're all trying to like throw all dice.
That in there, or it could be like it's some sort of cult from the top down, and so they're trying to weed everyone out. So it wasn't enough that like, for me personally, I came into the game, locals had already died from Reflect Refrain, and we're like, all right, we'll build it back up. All right, they died again to Persian Fox. All right, we'll build it back up. And then they died again to Sherry, and it's just like weeding everyone out till you only have like the strongest left. And it's like that could be what they're doing, because if so, they're really weeding that out real good. But before we get too sidetracked there, but
honestly, I love slandering Scheherazade on stream. Taylor Norris, if you're watching this, Scheherazade is the worst. Please never.
Never. Hashtag never again.
Hashtag never and ever.
You need to make like exclusive shirts. See, the company needs to make shirts when they start making merchandise, and they need to be like, I survived Reflect Refrain, I survived Persia, I survived Scheherazade and stuff. So we could like collect them for all the different eras we were in. Like, oh, you were survived that? I've heard talk of Scheherazade. Like,
all right, listen, Colin. I made the How the Lich Stole Christmas Mad a reality. I can meme anything into existence. I'll talk to Jim about getting I survived Reflect, I survived Persia bits.
and you can, and the super rare mats will be like, I survived Scheherazade, and in small print it'll put parentheses barely. Something like that. Because that's what I need.
I survived Persia bits and cried all the way through. That's a good idea. Persia made a ban list. Reflect was the only thing that got banned on his first ban list, but Persia made her own. Rough.
Man. But I think that's probably a good point to wrap it up before you die of coughing too.
Hey, that's what I've always been doing.
But
nobody was able to join us, but that's fine. We got some good talking done. If I said anything wrong, Ryan will just yell at me in chat later. So,
hey, he can't yell if he's not here.
Exactly. You know what? You're right.
He can yell in person all he wants.
And YouTube. Yeah, people on Facebook, YouTube, and Reddit can just yell at me in the comments there, and I'll just shut them down when they're like, "Oh, Evil Elemental Uprising won me 3 matches against Witch." Yeah, because you're playing bad Witch decks.
We can get. We'll tell Ryan next time he comes on. He can bring a red paddle, so whenever we start saying something he doesn't like, he raises it, and then he gets to talk, and we have to stop talking. So.
The talking stick.
Yeah. All right.
Listen, dude, I beat Aaron Miles with the Witch deck in the mirror match. I think I have an authority to talk on it.
That's true. He is the better Miles.
Hi, I got my paid invite with it. Let me put up this red paddle. You know. All right. Well, it's a good spot to end. Before we go, you know, I'll add in. We've pretty much already gone over like my tier list and what I think might happen at Orlando, but. First of all, I hope to see everyone there. We'll probably do like a primer for it before the event happens, maybe like the week before. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for more videos about how much we hate dealing with distortion of time and Lorite. Jeff, if you're watching this, get those ban hands ready. December and January are coming fast.
I want to see this at the ban list. Just.
Yeah. I think at this point, Jeff probably just has like a big red button in his room. 2 of them actually. One that says ban distortion, one that says ban Lorite, just from the amount of comments he's gotten. So he just one day in like late December, he's gonna be like, "All right."
And then he accidentally only hit ban Lorite.
Ooh, that'd be bad. Let's not do that.
All right.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. This has been Mike.
And Colin.
Yeah.